Hello and welcome. We're so glad that you're with us and that we're with you. And today, Patricia, we want to talk about telling your story.
Yeah.
And this is important. You know, where there has been abuse, where there has been, dysfunction, often it's, be quiet. Don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's so much shame around what has happened that it's a silencer.
Right.
And there's sometimes a fear in what will happen if I do tell.
Mm-hmm.
And there is such power in telling your story in a safe place, but releasing that it will unlock some things inside of you to even allow healing to begin to come in.
Exactly. I've been really burdened by this, Michelle, because we see this on multiple levels.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, and you and I were talking about this in the green room earlier, is when someone is sexually abused, let's say by a family member, right away they're told to be silent.
Right.
Don't you dare tell anyone, or. There's always the big or, right? And so we have that level. But the thing is, if you stay silent, there's never justice. There will never be justice when there's silence. And there will never be healing. Because in that situation, there needs to be healing in the relationship. There needs to be healing for your wounded soul. There needs to be healing for the person who was the perpetrator of that abuse, so that they can get delivered and so that they can take responsibility, full responsibility for what they did. And sometimes that's even penal. Like sometimes, your abuser needs to go behind bars. And that's not a bad thing. It's nothing that you should be ashamed of if that is needed, okay? Right. So there is that level. But also what is concerning me right now, and especially with Voice for Victims, we get many calls from many people regarding their stories. We want to encourage you to contact us at Voice for Victims. You can tell your story and you can contact us and we'll give you the information. Michelle will give you the information on how you can email and start sharing your story, because when you start sharing your story, healing comes.
Yes.
But also there needs to be exposure. So we get these stories shared with us, and they're all tragic. But some of them that really disturb me the most is when you've got what I call a predator that is even working beyond someone who's immoral, but someone who is intentionally being driven by their own addiction or lust or control issues, whatever. And they go from woman to man. I mean, we've got a situation now where it is involving both men and women. And the people are coming forward to tell their story. And there's even some proof. There's, things that are documented in their memoirs. I won't go into the details because we're trying to keep them covered. But they are afraid to come forward because they've been threatened. They've been threatened by the perpetrator of that abuse.
You're trying to keep the victims covered.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the victims then are not able to bring their story forward because they're intimidated, they're afraid, they're being threatened. Even like these days, we have perpetrators of abuse getting up on social media and saying, if if anyone dare comes against me, I'm going to throw an attorney at you and sue you for all that you're worth. I mean, we've had that happen to us, right? And it's like, you can't be intimidated by that. I know that when it was happening to us, I thought, well, if you take us to court, you're not going to really find anything because there's nothing there, right? But even if there was something there, it's still better to bring everything out into the open. And, we've got people who have been victimized who are married, and their spouse doesn't know yet, so that's hard that they were brought into a situation and now they're afraid to tell their spouse because it might cost them their marriage. And then you've got the perpetrator of that abuse warning them, saying, if you dare tell, I'm going to do this to you or that to you. So these things are very real. We want you to know, unfortunately, They are happening within the body. And this is what Voice for Victims is emphasizing, is victims within the body of Christ. We need to clean up the body. These things should not be happening. There should be no Christian family that has sexual abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse or physical abuse going on in any way, verbal abuse. It shouldn't be happening, because if we're in the nature of Jesus, we should see a love environment in our homes. But definitely in the church, where you've got leaders who are looked up to as spiritual authority, anointed men and women of God, they should be able to be trusted in their holy behaviors and not be able to set people up to be victimized behind the scenes in the dark places and destroying their souls. That should never happen. And if it is happening, God is going to expose it. But one of the things, Michelle, that we're having a hard time with is a lot of times the victims, they don't want to tell their story for the reasons just mentioned. So therefore, the perpetrator of the abuse continues to abuse more people who they also are afraid to bring their story. And ideally, if you can all come together and document your stories and have that in writing and do it together, which is what the Me Too movement actually did, then it gives strength that you can do something about it. Because ultimately, even the perpetrator of abuse didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm going to be a predator. No, it happens with woundedness. A lot of times the orphan spirit that we've been emphasizing lately, not knowing your value, not knowing your identity, not being able to feel fulfilled in yourself, makes way for the enemy to then set you up. But if it continues and continues and continues, it doesn't go away on its own. And so that predator is going to continue to do that until they are stopped. They might say, I'm not going to do that anymore. But it won't happen like that, because you are dealing with an addictive behavior, dealing with brokenness until that is really healed up, and until everything comes out into the light. There is no healing, which means that person is going to go into more darkness, which is horrible, because God wants them loved. He wants them ministered to and healed and to stand strong. He loves them, even though what they're doing is deplorable, but he wants them free so that they're freeing themselves and not able to hurt other people. And then all the victims that are like wreckage, we're seeing so much. It's just, it breaks my heart.
It's heartbreaking.
It just breaks my heart. And the moment you try to bring it into the light, you are coming under accusation yourself. So it is a very hard situation. And I just want to say to those of you that are pastors and leaders, do not sweep this under the carpet. Do not protect a predator. Do not protect an immorality that is happening within your midst. Deal with it properly. Don't just cover it up. It needs to be healed. It needs to be brought into the light. But especially when it's predatorial, it really needs to be addressed. So it is very important that we're able to tell our story and not be accused by being, oh, you terrible thing, why are you why are you exposing that man of God? Why are you bringing that out? It's the anointed one. You cannot come against the anointed of God. Well, you surely can if they're doing things that are not godly. Right? And so, I can't speak this loud enough right now because I'm seeing it myself in my own experience, and I'm being muzzled. Being muzzled, saying, you can't tell my story. It's here, but you can't, tell it, which I totally understand, and I will keep that confidence. But what will really help if we can get everyone telling their story. Is that going to be hard? Yes, it is not an easy road. And will God give you the grace to go through how hard it is? Yes. It is available to us, and there are people around, like Voice for Victims can help stand with you. And we've got resource. We listen to the stories, and then we connect you with people that, we've got legal references. We've got inner healing, deliverance, counselors, people that really work with this field that we can help victims with. And you might be watching and maybe you're a predator. And you're trying to cover it up. Don't cover it up. Bring it into the light and get healed because he loves you. God loves you. And he wants you healed. Is it going to be hard? Oh, yeah, it's going to be hard. It'll cost you everything. But on an eternal scale, it's worth it to make it right here so that you don't go into eternal damnation. Yeah. And that's a very real thing.
Right.
So, but there's so much pain out there, Michelle. So many people hurting.
Yes.
And you try to go on, I'll just move on, but you're never the same until it gets healed.
That's right.
And there's justice always cries. The foundation of the throne is righteousness and justice. Yeah. So justice is always crying out, saying, justice, we need justice. This needs to come into the light, and so that it can be healed and can be dealt with.
And in so doing, you're also often providing a key for someone else to come out of their prison as well. Patricia, when someone has a story, when something has been happening to them, specifically maybe in the church right now, because that really is our heart. We want the church to get cleaned up. We want a purity
and
in
we
the
can't
body.
help the world if we're wrecked ourselves.
Right. And we want the church to be the safe place, and it should be. And there's a place in me of real a passion unto a righteous anger when people are in the church and they're victimized in the place that is representing our God and victimizing people. In Voice for Victims, we want to hear the stories. We are a safe place to share what is happening. But what do you suggest to help people get their stories out if they're wanting to broadcast something in order to cause something to stop? Because we're not set up to be the policeman to go after some things in Voice for Victims. As much as we would like to be able to do that, we can't. So what do we do? What's the process? If someone's got this, and they're like, this has got to stop. There are more people that are being hurt, and you're not the only one.
Right.
That's also a deception.
Right.
That makes you believe you're the only one. You're not.
Yeah. And a lot of times, especially with predators, like once one comes out, then another one comes out, another one comes out.
Yeah.
Someone told me yesterday that they knew of a situation where 2,500 women came forward concerning one male leader in the church over, I forget how many years it was that this was going on, but over 2,500 people were affected. Now that's a huge addiction that was going on. And but it was
it's like a huge addiction and a lot of wounded people.
I didn't believe it. I thought, this cannot be.
Yeah,
Like, do you mean 25 people?
250.
250 is overwhelming. No, for sure it is 2,500 people. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've never heard of any. That was something I've never heard anything like that. And then we wonder why we don't have the power in the church to change the nation. It's because this is going on. We need to bring this into the light. So let me share with you from my own experience some of the struggles that I've had with telling the story. So someone comes to tell the story, and we've walked with many people through this, because a lot of times the predators, and always beware of someone that is not under a strong accountability covering. And I'm not talking about a few board members that they meet with, a couple times a year. I'm talking about someone who needs to be really accountable. Every ministry needs to have strong covering over them, because then if something happens and you go to your leader and say, this is not right what you did, and then they come against you for that, then you can go to their leader. And if you are a leader, make sure that you believe the victims. Too often, it takes a lot for someone to go forward with their story.
Does.
So if they go forward with the story and then you say, oh, I don't believe it, that just wounds all over again.
Yes.
So what we've done is help people, first of all, tell the story, go and confront the person. And then if that's not heard, which usually it's not, because it's usually denied, then you go to the covering. And I am amazed at how often this happens, that I'll go and approach a covering and say, these reports have come to me, and you're the covering of this ministry. I don't even hardly know them. You're the covering, so deal with it. And it's like, oh, well, they're not really under us at all. They just say they are.
Wow.
And then I think, well, then who is?
Right.
You know, because you assume they are, because, you know, the perpetrator has given reference to them.
Right.
They say, no, I'm not the covering. I don't really want to have anything to do with this. So then what do you do?
That's helpful.
Right? And so I feel that this is a hard thing, because you don't want to get involved with slander or anything, but people do have to be warned. And I personally feel like if you see someone that is connecting with someone that you know is a perpetrator of abuse, that you can go warn them, tell your story to them. Just tell your story to them. And I've told some people the stories that have been told me, to just give them a little bit of heads up, saying, you know, you can weigh this up, but these stories have come in about this ministry, so walk in carefulness, but do everything we can. And I just can't stress enough, I've been trying to talk to especially apostolic leaders, look at, if you're connected with this person, do whatever you can to get some discipline there and some help so that people are safe. But all too often, I know of one situation where the leaders who were not even the apostolic covering, although people perceived that this was the apostolic covering, they went to the perpetrator, confronted them, and the perpetrator denied it, even though that there was proof, even though there was strong indicators, almost like that you couldn't deny. I said, no, I just deny that. That did not happen. And so then where do you go? That's a hard one, right? That is a hard one. But you know what? God knows at the end of the day. And I think that once that process has taken place, then it's in God's hand. But at least it's been taken place. And I know one victim that we're walking with, doing the best that we could to get their story to the right people. They have had to go into all kinds of counseling and everything. Now they're moving on. It was hard for them because they never saw justice. They never saw this man brought into the open where this could be addressed and stopped, because there was no covering to really do it through. And unless you all get together and post it on Facebook, like we've seen on some, which isn't the ideal situation, and you have to have, in order to do that, you have to have many documented accounts. You can't just do that on one account. You're setting the victim up to really be lambasted, and you're setting up things legally as well. You know, so you want to walk wisely. But if you have a number of documented stories, people telling their story, and it's written down as documented, then you can, if it's not being heard when you go one-on-one, if it's not being heard when you go to the apostolic leader or the ones that you feel are, then we have seen it go on the internet, and at least it warns the public. It just raises, I mean, all hell breaks open. But when you do that, then God can go in and start working with it, and he can do what we cannot do. So it takes a lot of courage to tell your story. You will be called a liar. You will be named every name under the book, because perpetrators don't always just pick, like, they don't usually pick whole people. They pick people that have needs or vulnerabilities, and
or have already been broken.
Or have already been broken in an area, or are too young to know the difference in the Lord. And so they will come back at them. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. And then they say, I have a right to face my accusers. I think, no, not on my watch. You're not going to face them right now. I'm going to protect them because I know what you're going to do to them. I've seen it, right? So don't be afraid to tell your story, even though it takes great courage. It takes strength. You need to pray into it. Maybe tell it to people who can help get it to the right sources. If justice is not brought to you when you do tell your story, and when it does go into the proper channels, I assure you, God, I don't know the timing of it, but God is going to deal with it. He is not mocked.
That's right.
He is not mocked. He is, like, you reap what you sow, and there is a ramification coming if you don't, like, voluntarily align with justice. Then God will do it when you're
Right.
when you're not open to it. He will do it. But tell your story.
And the more voices that are raised in the midst of situations, the more validity comes to that
Exactly.
story. So you may feel like you're the only one, but if you will allow yourself to share that, the more you share it, there will be, just as you mentioned before, the Me Too movement, it gave courage for others who had been silent to all join those voices together.
Right.
And there's always power
Right.
in unity.
And I just want to say, too, is that when you're telling your story, this is, when you're a true victim, like, you need to tell the detail of what happened to you and how it affected you. We have someone that we work with now that is writing a book and bringing issues up in it that they experienced through their own journey of healing through abuse by a leader. So they're sharing details of that. But make sure that there's no fabrication, because in the
Right.
Me Too movement,
Yes.
there were then some that came in and fabricated things.
Right.
So then it disqualified the ones
Right.
that were telling their true story.
Right.
So make sure that you're not embellishing anything or adding to anything, that you actually just say exactly what happened.
Yes.
Because
It's enough.
this is a huge situation.
Yeah, it is.
And we don't want something to be discredited just because of a detail being off or something. But tell your story.
Tell your
Be
story.
brave, tell your story. So how can they get in touch with Voice for Victims?
Yes, so at Voice for Victims, we want to hear your story. And you can contact us at help@voiceforvictims.life. That's an email address, and let us know what's happened. Let us know what's in your heart, and we want to walk with you and give you those resources for facilitating healing in your life, and to come alongside where we can.
Yeah, and we have an intercession team that intercedes. A lot of times victims, they don't have anyone to even pray for them because they're not allowed to say anything.
Right.
So no one even knows what they've been through.
Right.
So we have an intercession team who will pray for you, and they will invite God into the pain of what you've been through to bring healing. And we have legal connections for you. We have counseling connections. We have books. We have articles. We have things that will help you in your journey to healing.
Yeah, from people who have been there.
Yeah.
We've got resources of how they've come through it and how that they are walking in victory, because we want you to come through it and
Yeah.
also walk in victory.
And we have the website, voiceforvictims.life. Remember the word life, because it's life-giving.
Right.
Voice, number 4, victims.life. And so go on there and see all the resources available. There's all kinds of information there that'll help you. And we also have a Facebook page where things are posted. Really great teachings and things like that. Just insights and
And
testimonies.
support.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So we have those things available for you to help. And if any of you feel like supporting Voice for Victims with your prayers or your finances, we always appreciate that. You can go to either voiceforvictims.life or go right to patricia-king.com and find more information on how you can give there.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to hear from you really soon.